How many times have you tried to start a new ambient track and it doesn't quite turn out like what you had in mind? Or maybe you're just curious about ambient music and you're wondering if this could finally be the genre you've been waiting to get into and it's been pulling at your heartstrings to get started. Either way, somehow your path led you here to this video. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to produce an ambient music track in 30 minutes so you can hopefully gain some insight into the genre, learn some new techniques, and set yourself on a totally new journey with ambient music. It's important to note here that this video is intended for the absolute beginner. Regular viewers on my channel know that some of the topics that I get into are pretty deep and for more advanced producers, but we're going to start with the basics here and work our way up. That said, welcome in if you're new, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And finally, if you love what you see here and you want to learn more, this channel is also on Patreon. There, I've got tons of extra tutorials. Some are aimed for the absolute beginner, over 50 exclusive preset and sample packs, one-on-one ambient coaching, and so much more. Click on the link down below in the description to get started. That being said, let's get into it. 30-minute ambient music track for beginners. Enjoy. All right, so here we are inside of Ableton Live 11. Now, the goal with today's video is to produce an ambient track in 30 minutes. And I should also note this video is aimed towards the absolute beginner. You know, with ambient and electronic music, we all approach it with different perspectives. We all don't even have the same tools. But hopefully some of the core concepts that I provide you today are going to give you a good head start into the world of ambient music. I'm using Ableton Live. You might have the same DAW as me. Some of the synthesizers that I use, you might not have, but that's okay. If you guys can really just kind of analyze and soak it all in, hopefully you can use these techniques in your own ambient productions. All right, so like I said, I'm using Ableton Live. Your DAW may differ, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and start right now. We're just going to lower the tempo to around 70 to 80 beats per minute. I'll stay with 75. I've already picked a key. We're going to play in D minor here today. And let's go ahead and get started. So I am going to grab a synthesizer. Now, the first synthesizer that I always recommend to beginners is Serum. Now, why would I recommend Serum? Unlike Vital, Serum is really straightforward when it comes to like design. I mean, it only has one filter. It has, 8 LFOs, so does Vital, but it's a wavetable synthesizer. And it really just has that wonderful sound that you'd expect to come from a synth like this. And that's why I always recommend it for beginners, is because you can see exactly what's going on. And there's not too much in the way as far as grasping the concepts and the core methods of synthesis. All right. So down here at the bottom left, we're looking at what we call the amp envelope, which is basically the volume of the synthesizer. How is the volume going to rise or fall? And depending on what you're trying to create, that's what kind of shape you're going to create down here. So we're going to create a pad to start with. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the attack, which is how much the volume will raise. And we're going to make that attack around 3 to 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and just leave it at 4 seconds right here. Using this little magnifying glass, I'm going to back off and so we can see the entire envelope. We're going to skip the hold section because we don't need that right now. And we're going to add some decay to it, maybe like 4 seconds, and lower the sustain. The sustain is where the volume is going to stay until I let go of the keys. And we're going to lower that down a couple decibels, and then we're going to increase the release. So now we have basically ambient mountain here. This is the typical ADSR shape right here. And yeah, that's looking good. So combine that with the default sawtooth wave, this is what we're going to get. And as you can see, the volume sort of stayed at that sustain level until I let go of the keys. Now I'm gonna go ahead and lower the volume here. I'm gonna lower the gain down here a little bit, do some gain staging. That should be good. Now, as you can see, I'm using the utility template for Ableton Live. And there's a curve down here that I always get asked about. Why do you use the same EQ curve on every single track? I don't. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. It's just a really good EQ curve that was designed by Don Tyler, the creator of this template. So you can choose to use it or not by turning it on or off. But what I am using is the utility gain staging sort of multi-purpose plugin inside of Ableton to control my gain staging for this track. It's really helpful to kind of get a handle on what gain staging is. So I recommend that you check that concept out if you want to really get some good sound out of Ableton Live or any other DAW right off from the start. All right. So I also have a compressor down here. We're not going to pay much attention to that. But what we are going to pay attention to is back here in Serum, the wavetail that we're using. This is just the default sawtooth, which is cool. I do a lot of work with sawtooths. I do like plucks and I do basses. Sawtooth is my favorite waveform shape. But for this case, we're going to grab another wavetable. Now, Serum comes with a bunch of wavetables. You can use any wavetable you want. I recommend some of the Spectra ones in here are really good. Maybe some of the the digital ones. I'm going to use some of my own wavetables. I've been creating a new sound set for Vital. So I'm just going to use some of my brand new wavetables that I've got here. So let's go ahead and hear what this sounds like. As you can see, I'm moving the wavetable position here, just kind of back and forth. We can go ahead and move that with an LFO, which is a low frequency oscillator, which is used for movement. Or we could just kind of find a spot in the wavetable that we like. That's nice. Or right there. Center of the wavetable is pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and add some voices to it, meaning unison voices. They're basically just copies of the same waveform. So I'm going to go ahead and increase, just scroll up here, increase it to about 5. And then the detune amount is how far or how much those waves are detuned to each other. So as you can see, when I spread this out, it's going to sound pretty wild. When I pull it back in, it's going to sound more in tune with itself, right? So now if we combine this, we already set our ADSR down here, the attack, decay, sustain, and release. We've already set our unison. We're using 5 voices. We can play with this detune amount right here. And then we can play with the WTPOS, which is the wavetable position, all right? Now what we can use for the wavetable position is we can right click on it and we can select a mod source. Now you could use the chaos features over here. You could use any of the 8 LFOs. You can use another envelope. You can even use the velocity or the pressure. I mean, that's sometimes interesting. So let's go ahead and just use LFO1 here because that's pretty basic, right? So as you can see, a little green line showed up over here. That is because LFO1 is now tied to this wavetable position. When I start playing the keys again, you can see that wavetable is moving in a triangle shape, the same as our LFO. Now that's cool, but it's a little fast for my taste. So what we're gonna do is lower down the rate down here on the LFO and just make it like 4 bars. That's good. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put this LFO in bipolar mode by going to the mod matrix and just clicking on this little arrow right here, which is the type. So it's either unipolar, which is in one direction, or bipolar, which is in 2 directions, all right? So I'm gonna make it a bipolar LFO, nice and slow. So now it's moving over 4 bars. That sounds good to me. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the filter. Now the filter is basically an EQ. Every synth has a filter, right? But they all have different slopes and different curves. So the filter, this is called a low pass filter. This filter is really gonna start shaping that tone to something like what we want, which is on a soft pad, right? And as you can see, you can hear there's a point there where the frequencies are kind of peaking out, but the filter's kind of closing in. That's that sweet spot of the filter that I always try to get to. See, too much and you'll start to hear too much of the sound. Too little and you won't hear enough. But I encourage you to really use your ears and EQ to taste. There you go. Right there. Now we can also put some movement in this cutoff knob right here. That would be kind of cool, right? So we can either use the same LFO or we can use a different LFO. For example, we can use these sort of hidden chaos LFOs over here, right? So we can use those by right-clicking on the cutoff and saying mod source chaos 1. That's good. Now what we can do is just look at it, and as you can see, it's now moving in a random direction, but it's moving kind of fast. That has its uses, but I'm gonna go ahead and lower the rate down. There we go. With Serum, because it only has one filter, you kind of got to get creative about how you're filtering things, how things are moving. You can use a filter. It has a separate filter over here in the effects section, but really it's all about that one filter. And that's a really good filter, by the way. So, I mean, you don't need much else. It'd be nice to have two filters. Maybe we will someday. Who knows? All right. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and lower this amount down in the mod matrix over here. The mod matrix, by the way, is all the different assignments for all the modulations that we're doing. And for the beginner, I mean, you've learned a lot already. We've already gone over wavetable position. We've gone over ADSR, LFOs, filtering. This is good. Now, you can choose to use the onboard effects. Like I could just go ahead here and add a compressor, add a delay and a reverb, which is a solid choice. However, I'm going to use my own effects. Now, what I've got here is 5 different effects over here, which are in what's called return tracks. Now, return tracks are basically adding your original signal and you're sending that signal out to an effect. Now, what that does is it saves your CPU a lot because you can add as many tracks as you want to the same effect. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a Valhalla delay here, which is a really nice delay. It's got a custom delay here. It's just a dual dotted 8th note delay. But I'm going to go ahead and add some delay to that original pad sound. Check it out. You hear that? So you can hear it's making copies and copies and copies and copies. That's a good thing, right? So we got the delay going on. So all of this signal, because I've increased the A amount, all of this signal is going into Valhalla delay. Now I'm going to go ahead and increase D, which is Valhalla room. And this is my custom Valhalla room preset right here. Go ahead and screenshot that if you want. It's a LV426 with 55 seconds of decay time. And it's at 100% mix because it's on a send. Check this out. Right? So we have the original signal combined with the 2 affected signals, which are showing up over here in these 2 tracks, and that combined is making for a really sweet ambient sound. Okay, so a couple more things before we leave Serum. I'm gonna go ahead and add a sub oscillator over here. We're gonna lower it down by an octave. The sub oscillator is just a, kind of a bass, give it some grounding. Heard that really helped it out a lot. Okay. It could be a triangle, it could be a square. Use your ears, whatever you want. Make sure it's not too loud because the sub oscillator is very strong. I mean, when you put a lower octave inside of your original pad, it's a lot. Okay? We can go ahead and repeat the same process. We can add another wavetable here. Let's go ahead and grab one of those other wavetables. That looks good. Ooh, that's cool. Okay. Right? Now this wavetable is not going through the filter. Why? Because we haven't selected over here. There's A, B, N, and S. That stands for oscillator A, oscillator B, the noise oscillator, which is over here, and the sub oscillator. So whatever is checked on or off is going to go through that filter. Because we didn't have B checked, it's kind of nice though. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like that sound. So I'm lowering the level of oscillator B and leaving it unaffected. But in turn, that's giving me kind of a wide panoramic sound field. Like I really like that, okay? So one thing I'm gonna do is maybe I can start panning that lower oscillator back and forth. There's a pan control here, and I can use one of those LFOs on that pan control. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm gonna make it say 2 bars, just like this. And maybe we'll move the wavetable position, just like we did with the other one. Make it bipolar. We're making t-shirts, by the way. Make it bipolar t-shirts. Signs of life. Coming soon. And this is sounding good. This is a good, solid start to your track, right? So now we have a wide, spacious, deep pad that you can build your track on. The filter's moving, the wavetables are moving, we got a sub-oscillator, we've got effects, we're ready to get started. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Let me go ahead and save this real quick. We'll give it a random name. I don't know. Ooh, I like that. Instinct. And notice the folder that I'm saving it into, also coming soon. All right, so anyway, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and lay in some notes here. Now, I often get asked, what kind of notes are you using? What kind of chords are you using? How much should you add at one given time? So there's a lot of considerations, right? And I think the first consideration is you should probably start in a minimal sense, meaning don't add too much because we've already created this full wide field panoramic pad, so you probably don't want to add too many notes. I'm gonna go ahead and just create a MIDI clip here, and we'll go ahead and change the color, and let's go ahead and match the color there. Very good. And now we have this sort of, we've already set our scales. We can set our scale here, put it in scale mode, and then we're gonna take it off fixed grid. Now we have just a clean sort of like palette to work with here. We're working over 32 bars of sound. Now, what can we do in those 32 bars? Let's go ahead and just put down a chord shape. As you can see, the notes that I'm playing are lighting up here on the left. That's why I changed the color so you can see them. But as you know, ambient music is all about slow movements, right? So it's all about this slow evolving thing that you want to kind of embody when you start to actually compose ambient music. So let's go ahead and just lay in two notes here. Okay? A D and an A. That's it, right? We'll keep that D going, and then maybe we'll go, that's too high. Add an F. And maybe a G. That's good. Nice, I like that. And then bring it back down to center. Not too much. Really just thinking about, okay, let's make something super simple, right? And then we can adjust that. I can already hear in my mind, like, I'm like, okay, maybe I want to adjust that filter a little bit. Maybe I want to close that filter down a little bit. It's a little too wide open. One more note. Ooh, a C. I love D and C together. One of my favorite tunings on guitar is D-A-D, G-C-D. It's a nice sound. All right, let's go ahead and come back to Serum here. And let's pull down the cutoff a little bit, just a little bit, because we have that chaos modulator moving it. So it's already opening it up. But if we close it down and let the reverb do the rest of the work, that's what I'm talking about. I like that now. That's good. All right, combined with the notes that we made, yeah, we're off to a good start. Okay, now let's add another sort of like layer to this, okay? And what I like to do once I have a pad sort of like laid out is I either like to go in two different modes. I like to add a sequence, or I like to add a bass, okay? Let's start with the bass, because the bass is like really simple. And for a beginner, we've just gone over a whole thing in Serum. Like let's use this again. Let's go ahead and just add a nice deep bass pad, I call it, right? So let's go ahead and just do the same thing with the ADSR. It could be a little bit faster, doesn't have to be that slow. Let's go ahead and back up here and add some decay here. And now we're just gonna work with a filter, and we're gonna put that in 24, meaning it's 24 dB per octave slope. And let's go ahead and leave the sawtooth as it is. Check this out. Okay. That's a simple bass recipe right there, right? But add a little bit of reverb, just a touch of reverb to that. Yeah, just a touch, right? And now listen. You hear what I'm saying? You got a nice, solid foundation there, just from one sawtooth. You can combine it with a sine. Let's come back to the filter here. I'm gonna click on B, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and go to the analog basic shapes. There's that pad coming in. So now let's go ahead, while I'm holding this note, I'm gonna go ahead and grab what's called a span. This is a plugin from Voxango. Free. This is on my master fader. So I'm just looking and sort of analyzing the frequencies, right? What frequencies are we using here? And what does our overall shape look like? I'm always thinking about composing like I'm painting in these frequencies, right? I'm using the frequency spectrum as I would my color palette or my canvas. So I'm saying to myself, okay, what's here and where can I go? What's left? Well, we've got these frequencies. You can see these are harmonic spikes coming in here, and that's okay, because that's that pad sound, right? That's probably that C note I put in there, that D, and that's fine. Here's that bass that I'm holding with my left hand, right? Okay, and as you can see, as the pad fades out, the bass still remains. So frequency separation is a topic that's often talked about in mixing, in composition, but here you're seeing it in real time. So I want you to be thinking about that. How are you composing with the frequency spectrum in mind? And that's a really great concept for beginners to sort of grasp onto. I'm gonna go ahead and lay in a long bass note here. Ooh, I like when that changes, that's nice. Let's go ahead and switch to 8 bars. Where's that note I liked? D0. All right, there we go. So now we know we're getting that bass, right? It's locked in. You can change the bass note. You can do all kinds of stuff. That was just a simple sawtooth and a sine. Sometimes I like to use the sub oscillator as the sine and then do something like adding a sort of a morphable wavetable here to give it a little bit of movement. That also works. You hear that? So let's go ahead and do that. Make it bipolar. That's good. I really like that moment there. That works for me. Take off the gain stage a little bit. There we go. Yes. It's great. Now, in terms of contrast, one synth that I've been reaching for time and time again, you've seen on this channel already, is KULT. Why? Because KULT to me represents what else is out there, right? There's a bunch of ways to do this. You could do this with Omnisphere 2, you could do this with a hardware synth, but KULT has something. And I'm actually fascinated by this concept of like chaos theory and strange attractors, and like everything about KULT just makes me want to use it. And so when I reach for KULT, I reach for KULT to fill in this part of the frequency spectrum over here. Because it just has that, right? That's kind of in its bag, if you will, right? So how am I gonna do this? I'm gonna grab KULT, and KULT can get really crazy really quickly. So we're gonna do our best not to, you know, damage your eardrums or anything, but let's go ahead and select one of the oscillators here. I never know what I'm gonna get. Interesting, right? So the reason why I like KULT so much is because when I hear KULT, I go, oh yeah, that's that sound I'm looking for, right? And what I like to do with KULT is I like to play with kind of a sample and hold thing, right? So let's go ahead and make a simple ADR envelope. So I'm taking the sustain out of it. Why? Because I want this sound to be like a key that I press. And as soon as I press it, no matter if I hold it or not, it's just gonna fall right back down. So when I press the key, now we have an attack. As you can see, the seconds are down there at the bottom. A decay stage, seconds are down here at the bottom. And then a release stage. Release stage really doesn't matter. Right? So that sound rose and it fell and that was it. However, think about what that would do with delay and reverb. So I'm gonna go ahead and, right? It's kind of, right? Increase the frequency shift. Yes, nice, I like that. Right, but not too much. Because once I've taken the sustain out of it, then it's like, yeah, okay. You can have those for little details. Yeah. Let's do that, all right? So now, go ahead and add some notes in here. But first, let's crank the reverb, crank the delay. That's what I'm talking about. I'll leave the link to KULT down in the description. But wait, there's more. So we can make a sort of filter stage on KULT that's based on this idea of sample and hold, which is like randomized steps. KULT also has a secret modulator here called steps, which you can also use. Sometimes I use that. So with steps, this is like on-off signals, right? Kind of making your own sample and hold. Okay? So now I'm gonna take the filter of KULT and make it a 24 low pass filter and add some steps. So every time I press, look at that, it's moving. However, let's lower the rate here. Okay, come back to that. You see what's happening here? So the filter is being moved by this magical steps modulator we have here now, right? Yeah. But you combine that with the delay and the reverb. Yes. I live for this stuff. So like I said, even if you don't have the same tools as I, hopefully some of the core ideas and concepts around this kind of music you've seen here today. How this is made, how you create these worlds. And we didn't even get into the theory behind it or the concept behind it. I get into a lot of that on my Patreon. So if you want to learn more, this channel is also on Patreon. I've got tons of extra tutorials on there. Over 50 exclusive preset and sample packs. One-on-one ambient coaching, we do that too. Live streams, you name it. Check it out. Link will be down below in the description. Sweet. I love it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Whatever stage you are on your ambient journey, I just want you to know that it's possible to create the music that you've always wanted to create. You just have to give everything that you have to it. And when you think you're at a low point, you think you've reached, you can't get a point where you can't get better, you can always go further. With sound design and trying to create the higher levels of, the upper echelon, if you will, of the ambient worlds, you can get there. It takes time, it takes persistence, it takes motivation, and above all, it takes the spirit and the willingness to do the work that's required. But once you do, sky's the limit. I want to thank you for making it this far in the video. If this helped you in any way, please let me know in the comments down below. I love hearing from you guys. Take good care. And as always, keep your heads in the clouds, your feet planted firmly on the ground. My name is Chris from Signs of Life. I'll see you guys in the next one.